What's up, Vault Hunters? I'm Sh55, and this is Ultimate Vault Hunters. Episode number 4 is knocking on your door. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining the conversation. Whether you're joining us on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter, or listening along on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Spotify, we thank you for tuning in and listening to the program. For those of you who want to watch Ultimate Vault Hunters as soon as it goes live, you can hear it first bi-weekly Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific Time on Twitch and YouTube. You know him, you love him. We here at Ultimate Vault Hunters stand in awe of him. LazyData has returned to the program to showcase a very special build, the Flak Cannon. This build, for those of you who may not be aware, has successfully conquered pre-nerf Mayhem 10 True Guardian Takedown. Yes, that is 4-player scaled Mayhem 10 Guardian Takedown. Please join me in now welcoming LazyData back to the show. Lazy, welcome back. How's it going?
Hey, it's good to be back. Thank you for inviting me again. It was an absolute blast the first time, so it's I've been doing good, and it's very good to be back. Thank you.
Oh, of course. I'm super glad to have you, and I'm really glad to talk about Flak finally. Ooh.
Flak, yes.
It's my time. It's my time. I'm so excited to hear what you got to bring.
Yeah, Flak's pretty great. I've been really enjoying Flak as a character to play, especially in the harder content where the enemies are a bit tougher. So he's been really rocking that content over SAMR.
And you've been playing in a lot of Guardian Takedown, right?
Yes. Guardian Takedown has been one of my favorite additions to Borderlands that they've ever done. I've been really enjoying how they've designed it. Yeah, just the extra mechanics behind it around the crystals and the raid bosses themselves. They've been really fun to do.
That is true. I did enjoy learning how the crystals worked. That was an interesting mechanic to figure out. I heard that you completed Guardian Takedown, True Takedown mode solo pre-patch.
Yeah.
Is that true?
So yeah, I finally it was tough this time versus Malo on Takedown, which is a little bit lighter. I ended up finishing it about a day after it launched, so it took me a bit. But finally got across the line, beat Scourge, True Takedown. It was tough, but it was a lot of fun to do.
That's insane, dude. Like I had trouble just like with my DPS on single enemies. I don't know how you did it by yourself. Do you use like a cut purse or something? Like how'd you keep your ammo?
So yeah, I needed to improvise a little bit, especially at the start before I knew what I was getting into. But thankfully, if you've got a really min-maxed character, you can get through it without a cut purse. But I do recommend it. It was a lot of fun. It was tough. It was tough for sure.
That's crazy. So have you been playing the new DLC as well?
Yeah, I've been playing through that quite a bit. It's a really fun DLC. It's really replayable, and I like the guns in it. And
well, I guess it's time that we go ahead and get into the Flak build. I want to know everything. Yes. Can you please tell me everything?
So this is the Flak build, the Flak Cannon, as I called it from its origins. But so I'm going to start on the red tree. Flak's like the main core of this character. You're pretty much always running this tree just because there's so much good stuff here. So starting on the front row, Interplanetary Stalker. This is a hunt kill skill. It's going to increase our damage, and it's going to give us a few extra bonus versus different types of enemies, which works really nicely. This is a no-brainer 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Same goes for Leave No Trace. You mentioned ammo.
Yeah.
This skill alone, thanks to some synergies later in this tree, allows us to basically not worry about ammo. Leave No Trace is an extremely powerful skill. It does have a hidden internal cooldown in there, but that's fine with some of the weapons that we use. And I got a point of second intention, helps us get down a tree, and reload speed's always nice.
Right.
Hunter's Eye. This is a pretty good skill. In terms of the Guardian takedown, it's only really helping us versus the bosses because Guardians aren't humans, robots, or beasts, but it does help versus the bosses, and it is good for everywhere else in the game. Really good damage skill here. And then Head Count. This skill is so good because it allows Flak to have the quickest action skill cooldowns of any character. By a mile, because we're going to be hitting so many headshots. You can actually set this up to get your action skill back in under a second consistently.
I use that with a double penetrating pneumatic bang stick and just like instant get
you'll just instantly get it back. Yeah, so
it's crazy.
That's kind of the trick we're doing here. So yeah, that skill gives us a flat cooldown reduction based on critical hits. So really good skill. Then I go into tier 3. I've got the interesting 1 out of 5 2-Fang. For 99% of the content in this game, throw it back into second intention, the reload speed skill. I do this to basically just do some flashy one-shot kills versus bosses with an ion cannon, which is really fun to do. And as I say, I don't like respeccing; it's worth the point. So 1 point in 2-Fang, we can make that work. So that's why I've got the point there.
Okay.
The next row, tier 4, you want to max both these skills out. They're extremely valuable. You've got Big Game, which is going to increase all our hunter skills. So that's going to be, Interplanetary Stalker, Furious Attack, and really good skill. And then we've got Most Dangerous Game. This is going to give us some more bonuses, some gun damage, some critical hit damage, and some handling. Underrated stat, but handling is very useful. This will proc whenever we kill a badass, and it's there for 2 minutes. As I say, no-brainer. It's a fantastic skill. Gives us so much value from those 3 points. And then finally on tier 5, we've got Galactic Shadow, some more critical hit damage, and some aggro relief for Flak. That's going to be very important for this build, is that aggro relief. It's a 1 point of 15% damage, and then that's going to unlock Megavore, which is our capstone, arguably the most powerful capstone in the game, along with Short Fuse. Whenever you hit an enemy, it's got a chance of scoring a critical hit, and this is very important both in and out of fadeaway. It's going to proc those on-crit effects. It's, of course, going to give you the critical hit damage. And just in general, it's a really, really good skill for both damage and utility. And that's my red tree. That's pretty much what the red tree on Flak is going to look like.
Can you talk really quickly about Grim Harvest and why we don't use it?
So Grim Harvest is it might get a bit more use now that Rack Attack are hitting harder, but we don't use the Rack Attack here. The problem is the 1 point of 3% gun damage, which is not much at all. We've already got the points to get to Megavore, so we can start moving on the rest of the trees without taking it. And, all those points were worth more than the 3% gun damage. And even once you've maxed out your second tree, there's a skill that gives you 4% gun damage for 1 point and some action skill duration. So it rarely gets any value just because of where it is in the tree. You can't use it to move down the tree because you've already unlocked Megavore.
Right.
So you have to pick it afterwards, and there's other places to be, Power Inside and Frenzy. So
Fair. Sorry.
Yeah, we just couldn't reach it, unfortunately.
Derail, yeah, of course.
Now, moving on to the next big tree here, we've got Green Tree, it's the Stalker Tree, and the first skill here, Furious Attack. I pretty much picked this as my first skill when leveling a Flak. It's free damage. It's whenever you shoot an enemy, you get a stack of Furious Attack, and this is just a free 20% gun damage at 10 stacks on 5 out of 5. And it's a hunter skill as well, so it can get boosted by Big Game. A really, really good skill, gets us down the tree. Next, we've got Overclocked. It's free DPS. Whenever you reload, you'll just get more fire rate. Sometimes I find myself having to reload manually because, as I mentioned, Leave No Trace. It's going to keep our ammo topped up. So sometimes you have to remember to reload manually on occasion. That's how ammo efficient we are. And that will just give us the extra fire rate with extra DPS. We've got All My BFFs. 3 out of 3 here. It's... Don't neglect the pet. The pet is so useful, regardless of how much damage it's doing. We're using it for survivability.
Yeah.
We can use it for damage now as well, thanks to the extra 3 points and because of the pet buffs that came in. So All My BFFs helps keep your pet alive. So worth it. And you're going to want your pet alive because on the next tier, we've got Lit the Runes, which whenever you go down, we're Flak, we don't have lifesteal. Very reasonable to assume that you will go down. Your pet just picks you back up, and it's you need an alive pet for it to do that. Turn tail and run on that tree. It's one recurring theme with Flak. It's a lot of damage. So we've got standing still for damage, and then it gives you a bit of regen while you're moving, which is going to keep you and your pet alive. But that gun damage there, and again, it's we have so much gun damage with this spec. And another reason why Grim Harvest in the previous tree wasn't worth it, because if you've got too much of one type, you end up just getting diminishing returns, and you want to keep it varied. Moving in onto the next tree, and speaking of keeping it varied, we've got Hidden Machine. So this is going to give us 30% damage on enemies that aren't aggroed to us. And there's going to be 2 ways that we can make sure that happens. Is A, entering Fadeaway before the enemy spawns. So it's useful before you jump into a boss fight. So the first three shots against the boss, you'll have this bonus. And if an enemy spawns whilst you're in fadeaway, you'll get this bonus. Also, I mentioned regarding pet aggro earlier on, if an enemy is aggroed onto your pet, which we can make sure happens, you'll get this bonus. It's a V2 damage bonus, so it works really well into the damage formula. So
nice,
great skill to get. If you don't have much in the way of aggro relief, skill's not worth taking, but thankfully on this build we do, and that's why I took it.
Cool.
And we only need 3 more points to get to the power inside, so that's going to be the Fast and Furious, well above half health, so it's not a URAD build for that, powerful radiation anoint. We have to be above half health to get more gun damage and movement speed, which is very nice, and that's going to give us power inside. Final capstone skill here. Because our action skill is cooling down so fast, this is going to be up all the time. It's 50% damage. It works really, really well in the damage formula. It's V1 if I recall correctly, and it's going to be there all the time. So nice. It's just a huge damage increase for us. And then finally on to Blue Tree. These last few points that we've gotten have come here. As I mentioned, we got this Persistence Hunter. It's 4% gun damage per point, up to 12%. So 3 out of 3 with some action skill duration, which works very, very nicely for completing the crystal section on the takedown, the Guardian takedown, because you can just stand on them invisible. I'll talk to that after I finish the build, but it will keep you alive and make that encounter so much easier for you. Then unfortunately we need to spend 2 kind of wasted points. I've put them into Frenzy, give us some more just casual pet damage to help us unlock the next tier.
Ferocity?
Oh, yeah, no. 2 points of ferocity to get down to this next tier of skills. And that's going to be, you can do one of 2 things here. I've gone with Who Rescued Who. This is lifesteal damage so as you deal damage, it's lifesteal for your pet. And because you're dealing so much damage, your pet's health bar is just going to fly up. Huh. You can keep your pet alive through pretty much anything with this skill, barring maybe Wotan or a diadem explosion. Outside of that, your pet's going to be living with this. The alternative is if you have a bounty hunter class mod with points in Frenzy, you can put this into He Bites, which is a skill which when your pet takes damage, it returns some damage to your attacker. This counts as pet damage, so it will stack the Frenzy skill, which is just next to it. Whenever your pet deals damage, you flak get damage to all your weapons and such. So.
Oh.
Again, I only put the He Bites point there if I have a Bounty Hunter class mod with Frenzy as a skill. Otherwise, Who Rescued Who for the safety, keep my pet alive because my pet keeps me alive. And that pretty much rounds out the tree there. Very, very high damage. This is all
leveled to 60, right? So
yeah, this is a level 60 build, 58 skill points.
Awesome. What augments do you take?
So for Fadeaway, we take Not My Circus, the first one. It's okay. We take the middle 2. Not My Circus, after Fadeaway ends, our pet will do a taunt, drawing the attention of enemies, and it will gain huge damage reduction, 80%. Makes your pet really, really tanky. And because we've got BFFs, because we've got Who Rescued Who, our pet won't be dying. As long as you are giving some attention to making sure you're constantly looping your Fadeaway, this damage reduction is always going to be up, and your healing's always going to be up. So unless you're fighting, say, Wotan or a Diadem, your pet's going to be alive with this and taking all the aggro, which means the enemies aren't shooting you, which keeps you alive.
Cool.
And then until you're dead, it's just always on health regen and move speed. Move speed's never a bad thing. And health regen also equals health regen for your pet. And
it's also going to keep you doing that extra 30% damage to enemies as well when the aggro's not on you, right?
Yeah, so as the enemy is taunted, you'll they won't be aggro to you, as you say. Well, Hidden Machine will be active, so that synergy there allows you to use that skill effectively, and it's free damage.
Ooh. Okay, so you talked about Not My Circus. You said Until You're Dead. What does Until You're Dead do?
So yeah, that's the next one. That's going to keep your bonuses active after your Fadeaway ends, which is health regen, movement speed, keeps your pet alive, keeps you moving. Really, really good.
Okay. And what pet do you use? Or pets? What pets it's
So most of the time I'll use Spider Ant Scorcher. It's It's elemental damage, which is always nice, a nice bit of damage to have into your formula, and a bit of regen. It's not going to be much because we don't have Barbaric Yacht, but it's a nice bonus. Otherwise, if I need my pet to be away from me, if it's like taking aggro and stuff, I'll use the basic Skag, because the basic Skag is purely melee attacks. So if I need my pet to just be away, then I can just send the pet away with an attack command, and it will stay over there, hopefully. And lastly, if I'm trying to keep my pet alive, say versus Wotan, or in a situation where my pet might actually die, I use the Gunslinger Jabber. Because then it's a ranged weapon, the pet itself is going to try and keep its distance from enemies. And it gives you a bit of movement speed and critical hit as well. So those are the 3 pets that I swap between, Spider Ant Scorcher being the main one.
Cool. So what would you say the main rotation of this build is?
So the gameplay loop, we call it looping, looping your anoints and your augments. So you're going to go into fadeaway, fire off your 3 shots, because we're using 3-shot fade. And this is going to activate your pet taunt. It's going to activate until you're dead. And then any damage that you do, because there's going to be lots of lingering damage around, we're going to get lots of Megavore crits. And hopefully we can get our fadeaway back within the next, 3 or 4 seconds. We can just instantly activate it again. And so basically the goal is having fadeaway always available. You're always able to activate that invisibility and activate that pet taunt. Because if using, say, Gorillas, which is a different augment, which gives you more shots for longer in fadeaway, it's harder to loop. It's harder to loop those anoints. It's harder to loop those augments, and it can actually hurt you in the long run. And it does hurt you in the long run. So that's why we keep our fade duration short with the 3 shots, but the cooldown really, really quick.
Interesting. What damage builds exist out there that you could compare numbers to this build?
So the original idea of this build is I was up one night and I decided I want to one-shot everything. So me and a couple of friends just pulled together some resources of what we knew about Flak and just tried to make the highest possible damage. And then from there, I tweaked it to make it a bit more usable in general gameplay. And this is going to be one of the highest damage setups. We rely on our pet to keep us alive, so we do not have to invest much in our own survivability. So we're not using an action skill start stock gap is a popular item recently. I don't want to be using that as a damage loss. I want to use my good damage ASCs. Sorry, it's going to be a high damage. It's hard to compare with it.
All right, that's fair. While we have you here, clearly the build is only part of the story with how you managed to defeat the true takedown at such a high level of play. What would you say your strategy for the crystal activation sections was?
So crystals, the activity that gives me the most grief, as I'm sure many can relate. Crystals is really, really tough. To beat crystals, you need to stand on the plate for a certain amount of time without enemies coming onto the plate. And then you got to do that to 3 different crystals. And if you neglect a crystal for too long, it pops and kills you, right? So what I do is at the very start of the encounter, I'll activate fadeaway, step onto the crystal, and then tell my pet Skag to attack the enemies that are spawning. And that is going to make all of them... They can't aggro me, because I'm invisible when they spawned. So they aggro my pet. I can stay in fadeaway for the 18-second duration, I think it is, with Persistence Hunter. That gives me that almost completes my first crystal for free. If my pet gets close to dying, keep an eye on its health bar. I step in, start shooting, heal the pet up, activate fadeaway, and from there it's just having my pet keep the enemies off of the crystal to the point where you can almost just AFK a crystal and it just charges it for you because the enemies don't come to you.
That's insane.
I've done plenty of crystals without shooting an enemy because I can just stand there.
That's crazy. So what would you say your strategy was for Anathema?
Okay, so the first boss, that one's broken down into about 11, 12 phases. So for that one, what I'll do is, because we've got a lot of damage, I'll use one of my main DPS weapons. Either be a Monarch, Plague Bearer, Backburner, whatever is like the go-to damage weapon.
Okay.
And then you're pretty much able to burn it down within 1 mag to the first phase. And the moment it goes immune, you can do 2 things. One strategy that I see a lot is to draw the boss to a corner of the main platform and then run to the other corner. I'm personally not a fan of this because it relies on the enemy AI. What I personally do is I look for the closest jump pad and I jump to one of the other platforms, whether it's safe or not. And then turn around and get ready to jump back to the first one. You'll watch this radiation bubble like expand. That's an insta-kill. Don't jump into that. The moment it pops and starts dissipating, I'll jump back onto the main platform to get away from a potentially exploding platform behind me. So that's why I say it doesn't matter if you jump to a dangerous one, you can jump away from it in time. And then you're able to just get onto the next phase, rinse and repeat, boss dies.
Amazing. Okay, what's your strategy for Scourge, the Invincible Martyr?
So Scourge is a really fun boss. Again, it relies on our heavy damage. We don't have any lifesteal, and there are things in this fight that can kill our pet. So we really need to lean on our damage here. We burn down the boss as quickly as you can, use pillars for cover, jump a lot. Wear a transformer if you can. There's a lot of shock attacks, and the moment it goes immune, again, it's broken down into lots of different phases. 2 diadems will spawn. If you're in multiplayer, more will spawn. And the Scourge will teleport to the middle of the zone. If the diadems are behind Scourge and will need to walk past Scourge, you're good. The moment they're walking past Scourge, shoot the orbs on the head, they'll explode, stunning the boss, it won't be the nuke. And you can then use the diadem damage to, hurt the boss and to get it to the next phase quicker. Cool. If they spawn to the side, though, and will not walk past Scourge, it gets a bit awkward. What I'll do is I'll just run past the boss and behind it, so they do have to walk past Scourge, because you need to get them next to the raid boss. If all else fails and you are unable to stun the boss, try and kill what you can and hide behind a pillar so the big wipe doesn't get you. And if that fails and you're not able to get to cover, make sure you're going down near an enemy to get a second wind.
Good tip.
Yeah, midway through the fight, it'll teleport you. There, it's just a question of mobbing, so use your reflux or whatever your mobbing weapon is. Teleport back, and then again later into the fight, teleport you away again. Same story, some mobbing. And then for the final diadem section, where it's just the boss's shields, the diadems do more damage to the boss now, because I believe it must be shock damage. So when you stun the boss, the diadems are enough damage to just phase it again. You don't even need damage. So that section becomes much easier if you've got the first sections down to a pat. That's what Flack's good at, bossing. He's really good at bossing. And it's the mobbing that people tend to struggle with Flack, which is understandable, but they're really good at the bossing. They've got that down.
Completely agree. What do you feel the Flack cannon excels at the most?
So again, outside of the pet aggro, we don't have as much crowd control as, say, some of the other characters or builds that use other shields and stuff. So you can struggle with mobbing, especially if it gets a bit intrusive in your face. You do need that good chaining mobbing weapon like a reflux to help deal with that. So what I say excels the most is bossing and boss farming specifically. This is basically whenever a level cap comes out, I start playing Flack. And I farm all my guns for my other characters on Flack, just because they have the fastest farm and run times.
Right.
And the Flack cannon just cannons down the boss.
Amazing. So about the skill tree. Mm-hmm. This is a monstrous pet-focused build, which is incredibly refreshing to see. A lot of players have been hungry for pet-focused builds, but you, pre-nerf and pre-phase 2 patch, put together one that was able to work on Mayhem 10 in a true takedown. What motivated you to take this leap of faith of sorts to devise this build?
Well, it was mainly just understanding that you didn't need the pet for damage. Now it has some damage, which is nice, but before it was for the utility. You always bring up Flack's survivability. He's not able to face tank like some of the other characters. Yeah. Well, you can't face tank, but with the pet, you don't need to face tank with that aggro relief of Not My Circus. So I always used to play Rax, and then it was somebody I know, Rator. He was using Not My Circus, and I noticed that. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I asked him about it, and I applied it to my setup here, and it works really well. And Fade Away is now my favorite action skill.
Awesome. I'm glad. Welcome to the team.
Yes.
Okay, so this build seems to be focused more a lot into survivability than one would expect. Mm-hmm. Were you anticipating the takedown to be extremely taxing and then would require extra points and normally overlook survivability talents?
So normally the survivability is there for the pet, to keep that alive, because the pet keeps me alive. In terms of the taxing of the Guardian takedown, it was definitely more than I expected. I expected Trial of Supremacy Plus. I was not expecting what we got, and I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed it a lot. In terms of a respec, I was mainly running URAD at the time, so definitely did have to swap into this, having Health Gate again, and did sacrifice a little bit of damage, but it helped me get through. It helped me get through with that extra survivability, keeping the pet alive. It makes the difference.
Awesome. So living long is one thing, but if you're out of bullets, you're out of luck. How were you able to keep your ammo going strong during the encounter?
There were two main weapons that I use, sometimes a third. The first is going to be shotgun, the Reflux. Because the Reflux has got a reasonable fire rate, and it's got all these chains that are flying everywhere, it's triggering Megafort, which is triggering Leave No Trace. Shotgun ammo, it's infinite. You can, if you've got enough enemies, you can just hold down M1 or the trigger, and you never have to reload. It's like playing MOS.
Wow.
Monarch was my assault rifle of choice. Yeah, that did sometimes have some damage issues. Not anymore since the health reductions. I use the Cutburst Launchpad once during the Scourge fight, typically. But now, if you get some ammo pickups, you'll be okay, and you can get through. But cool. If not, Cutburst Launchpad, great item. Hope for it in a world drop, and that can help you on ammo there. And the last time was rocket ammo, because if you got a grenade that can get lots of hits, like a Hunter Seeker, rocket ammo is basically infinite on flak, because it's firing so slowly. You just need one Leave No Trace proc, and then boom, you get an ammo back. So the main trick for Guardian takedown and ammo is just using more than one weapon type. So if I use purely shotgun and assault rifle, I tend to run out of assault rifle. If I implement some rocket ammo in there too, that's going to lighten the load on the other two ammo types. So try and keep your loadout varied, and that really helps with the ammo situation.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I know that we just got 3 more levels, but if you had 3 more skill points to add your talent tree, where would they go?
1 in He Bites and 2 in Frenzy. Easy choice there.
You already know.
Yeah, already know. So Frenzy is, as I mentioned earlier, it's whenever your pet deals damage, you get some damage for yourself. He Bites is important because whenever an enemy attacks your pet, which it will be because of Pet Taunt, they take some return damage, and this counts for Frenzy. So your pet doesn't need to be doing anything. It could just be stood there, and it'd still be stacking Frenzy. So this is free damage right there. Flak has so much of it just ready and waiting. Any more points? Yep, we get some more damage. Don't need it, but we're getting it anyway.
Cool. So what weapons and gear will you be using in the build?
The Reflux is the premier mobbing weapon. It's chaining. It got buffed recently, which is terrifying. So that is probably the best mobbing weapon, and the area damage there is nearly matching a Mara Ties That Bind. Flak's damage is that ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
For single targets, for bosses, or if an enemy pushes me on crystals and is separated, I swap to a Monarch or a Plague Bearer to deal with that one. In terms of backup weapons, if you can't get a hold of those, Brainstormer. It's a smaller reflux, and same goes for Dictator to Monarch. So there's some easy ones to get earlier game that will do the job.
Wonderful. What anointments do you think the player should aim for?
So again, being an endgame build, anointments are going to be a focus, of course. In order of importance, I would say next to mags, 100% bonus elemental. This anoint getting buff was huge for Flak, because it allows you to kind of, match that URAD damage, but having elemental freedom, and it's always up because we're looping our fadeaway so much. So it's elemental damage. It's an extra damage instance. It's great. It's definitely one of the best anoints in the game. Secondary to that, consecutive hits. It stacks to 200% gun damage, so it is gun damage, but that's still a big number. It's easy to upkeep because we've got so many bullets flying around. We're so ammo efficient. It's okay if you miss a shot. I see this come up a lot. Consecutive hits is just dealing damage. It's okay if you miss, as long as you're hitting enemies within a certain amount of time. It will stay stacked, so it's actually a really usable anoint. Cool.
I did not know that.
And then after that, if you're still struggling, 100 ASE, 390 are 2 good backup anoints. Hell, even the Airborne. Airborne's a pretty good anoint to fall back on. It works really well. It's its own modifier. And It's a fun one to play around with as well as Airborne. So if you're still struggling for annoyance, don't sleep on Airborne.
Interesting. Would you say that Airborne is more viable now because of Guardian Takedown?
I don't actually use it much in Guardian Takedown. I use it in Maliwan more, funnily enough, because there's these towers that boost you into the sky.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because with a Monarch, you've got a bipod out, and you can't jump when you've got that bipod out. So that's the only issue with Airborne annoyance in the Guardian Takedown especially. But it's useful anywhere. There's no jump delay after you land, so it doesn't matter if you're in Guardian Takedown or in a place with proper gravity. You can instantly reactivate it, so sometimes good.
What gear would you say is considered essential, if anything?
Essential. So back to annoyance, I should have mentioned this. 50% elemental damage on your shield and grenade. Doesn't matter what shield or grenade it is, buy it from a vendor. Get these damage annoyance. Make sure they're 2 different elements and try and match the enemies you're fighting, of course. This is a huge chunk of damage that should not be slept on. You can get it the moment you reach endgame, the moment you beat the story. That is going to be very important, followed by a decent class mod. Now, Flak has got the widest variety of class mods out of any of the characters. So I use a Bounty Hunter. It front loads the damage. It allows us to apply Hunter's Eye to the Guardian Takedown bosses and just hunt skills in general versus bosses. And it's a very, very high damage class mod. Followed by Cosmic Stalker, boosts all our hunt skills. Definitely try and get one of these if you can't get a Bounty Hunter. Followed by the Rack Pack. It's a Rack class mod, but it can roll head count. And if you do get it to roll head count, it makes it really easy to loop your annoyance. So if you don't have the best annoyant looping kit, you can actually use the Rack Pack class mod to do it for you. And you can loop your fadeaway quickly with a rocket launcher. It's crazy good and fun to play around with. So I actually do recommend a Rack class mod for fadeaway.
Wow, interesting.
So that's definitely necessary. In terms of artifacts, you're looking for as much damage as you can get. Pearl if you can from DLC 2. Right. Otherwise, it's just going to be mag size, a weapon type damage passive on a victory rush. I was going to
ask you what roles you would consider ideal as modifiers.
As modifiers on like class mods and artifacts.
Yeah.
So we need to spread out multiple different damage types. If you just go gun damage, diminishing returns. So I try and get some crit damage if I can, some elemental damage if I can, some weapon type damage if I can. That's V2. So if you got a shotgun damage, an AR damage. Splash damage is good as well if you're using a rocket launcher like the Plague Bearer. Get some of that. And mag size is never a bad thing either. So those are the 4 main ones that I'd keep an eye out for.
And you mentioned the best grenade mod is just to get one that has elemental damage on it to match whatever enemies you're playing against?
To start with, yes. Eventually, you'll want to upgrade. I'm currently using an It's Piss grenade, dropped from Thunk and Sloth. That applies a debuff to enemies, letting you do more damage. That's what I use. But super ideally, a Hunter Seeker. This is a grenade that can split. You can get Divider or Mitosis, and then it will shoot enemies. And this will proc a lot of other of our skills. It can proc Megavore, Leave No Trace. It can proc Furious Attack. Can't remember if it procs head count or not. I wouldn't be surprised. It's a really good utility grenade. And what's great is it drops from Genevieve, who drops the Reflux, which is our chaining mobbing weapon. So maybe if you're farming a Reflux, keep an eye out for those Hunter Seekers, because it's definitely the best flat grenade mod.
Fantastic. So what shield do you use?
For shields, if I'm boss farming with my rocket launcher, I go for a one-shotter amp shield. Very tricky to get. You can farm up an O.M from Mallow and Takedown if one-shotters are evading you, because they just drop anywhere and they're hard to get. After that, Transformer, Old God, Stock Gap, Recharger, anything tanky. Cool.
Would you say this build would work if you don't have the proper weapons or gear yet?
You'd struggle a bit more to loop your fadeaway, so you might not have as much pet up time. Definitely do try and get either one of the main weapons or one of the lower tier versions that you can get earlier game, like the Brainstormer. The Brainstormer is really good because it's hitting a lot. Any gun that hits a lot, even a Maggie can, or a Dictator. Do try and get something that lets you get your fadeaway back within I want to say 7 or 8 seconds consistently. If you can get a gun that can do that for you, you're in a good spot. But
what about like a Lucian's Call? Because it gets you those crits really quickly, right?
Lucian's Call for fade looping, not so much for damage, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, sure.
It's not hitting it's not hitting as hard. Any kind of Jacobs will have a ricochet. So if you can get a Jacob shotgun like a Garcia, that's farmable. That'll work up until some of the mid to higher mayhems. Stagecoach, Maggie, I think I mentioned. Anything with a ricochet is going to be hitting a lot of enemies.
What would you say would be a suitable stopgap until I get all the optimal loot that I need for the build?
So again, in terms of like my route to gear this character, if I was leveling it up, so I beat the campaign with whatever gear you muster, and then you want to jump into mayhem mode. The first thing I'd farm up is probably a Hell Shock from Gigamind. This will be your like kind of first weapon to get. It's insanely powerful. It can accelerate you through the mayhems like no other, and it's Gigamind. It's easy to get, and Gigamind is also pretty good for dropping class mods as well. So that gets you on your way to getting those, bounty hunters and cosmic stalkers. And then from there, you are looking for your Brainstormer and Dictator to be upgraded into a Reflux and a Monarch, and then whatever is in the DLCs. I'm not fully up to date with all the weapons yet, but if there's any good hard-hitting weapons there, then they'll be good shouts as well.
Cool. So what Guardian rank talents should players focus on to get the most bonus stats for the build?
So as Flak, we will go down a lot. That's fine. We don't have, lifesteal, so be prepared to go down, which is why in the middle blue tree, we've got 2 Angry to Die. And it's insane. It can extend your fight for your life duration so much to the point you can kill bosses in a fight for your life duration.
Really?
If you ever see yourself going down, try and just activate your fade away. Because if you go down, it'll proc your ASCs to give you that damage boost and gives you the best chance of getting back up, and you've got the damage to get back up. So I definitely try and get that to give you as much time as possible. And then after that, you're basically looking at Overkill, cook a combo, and they're the important ones. Hollow Point's fun.
Hollow Point is fun. What Guardian rank talents would you say, if any, should a player disable to use this build?
There aren't any that you need to disable. Again, like I said last time I was on, Hollow Points being the double-edged sword, really powerful for ad clear, but can also catch barrels. But outside of that, there's none you need to disable. Turn them all on. Get all the power.
All of it. Okay, so when you're spending a Guardian token, what are the stats that players should focus on spending their tokens to obtain for maximum min-max potential?
So the way the Guardian rank talents work is they do try and force you to spread your points out as much as possible. Just try and spread out your damage types. So critical hit, elemental damage, gun damage, and fire rate. These are all things you're going to want a lot of individually. So don't just focus one. Spread them out and making sure it's nice and varied. And then after that, your quality of life ones, your reload speed, your handling, your accuracy, recoil reduction. Get those next.
Okay, so Bounty of Blood introduced 3 new talents in the Guardian rank tree: Groundbreaker, Dead Man Walking, and Lead or Alive. If you had to pick one to focus on getting first for this build, which would it be?
Probably Dead Man Walking. Again, it's just that crazy duration. It makes playing super, super safe. Now, in terms of mayhem modifiers, I personally play with Postmortem, which creates this death thing that follows you around and can insta-kill you. So I find myself just getting caught off by that a lot sometimes if I'm not fully paying attention. So I go down a lot. Having more duration is always nice. Lead or Alive is exciting too. That one's a very close second because we either have 1 or 2 points in second intention. Our reload speed's not the best. So having our weapons instantly reloaded is also just as good. And as for Groundbreaker, it's ridiculously powerful. It's insane what you can do with it, but I'm not going to try and punch enemies or slam a lot. So it's not something I'm going to focus on first, for sure.
Fair. So I assume that testing was needed in the takedown itself. Did you go anywhere else to test this build? Did you test in the firing range, Graveward? What's your testing realm of choice.
The way I test things, whether it be builds or weapons, what I first do is I go to everyone's favorite mobbing encounter, Athena's, just to make sure it works. If it's not blasting through Athena's, it's the immediate way to tell that something just sucks. If it's not able to just fly through Athena's, that just weeds out the waste. What's a waste of time? If you're able to get through Athena's nice and cleanly, then I upgrade to COV mobbing, whether it be Jacob's Estate or the Anvil or Slaughter Shaft. And if it's working there, good, that's solid. And then I'll take it into Guardian Takedown, or if I'm confident in it, true Guardian Takedown. And that's how I just go through testing new ideas and stuff. And that's kind of the route that I take.
Cool. What are some of the initial impressions you had when you first tested the build?
Wow, this does a lot of damage. I'm used to Amara and relying on all my damage being on ties that bind, and just doing damage off the bat. It was like, okay. it took some getting used to, because you don't want to overtake your pet, because then they'll switch aggro back to you and you'll die. So you got to learn to play behind your pet in gameplay, which is usually okay. That they're wanting to just punch, not doing anything smart. They just want to go in and punch. So it's fairly easy to do that in the end. But yeah, that was the main thing that I noticed, is I couldn't play as aggressive in your face, and wow, there's a lot of damage.
Fantastic. I can't wait. I'm excited to try it. What did the numbers look like compared to other similar builds, both ones that you've crafted and you've seen other community members display?
So the main comparison that I would draw between this build is there's a great resource for builds on the discord.gg/Borderlands, the Borderlands Discord in the builds channel. We've got a bunch of resources with a lot of builds for all the characters, and this one was very, very close to the suggested 3-shot fade build. So the flak section is mainly managed by someone called Rator. He's a genius when it comes to flak. He did the majority of the testing behind a lot of these skills. Oh. So credit to that, to all that work put in.
Cool. That's really cool. I'll have to check that out.
Mm-hmm. Worth doing. Definitely worth doing.
Do you feel that there are any changes that Gearbox could make to the game that would further refine this build without making it drastically over or underpowered?
In terms of flak, just in general, I think he's probably the most well-rounded, well-built character in the game. He's doesn't need much work at all. They're just really, really good. The only thing I would maybe suggest is things like Hunter's Eye applying to Guardians, the Cosmic Stalker, fully boosting Interplanetary Stalker, just small tweaks like that. Rage and Recover needs a little bit of a tweaking. At the moment, it's 8% of missing health over 3 seconds. If that could just be bumped up a bit to, say, maybe per second for 3 seconds. Small tweaks like that. Doesn't need an overhaul at all.
Cool. So when you were last with us, you teased a build to bring on the show in which flak would make an effective use of an ion cannon.
Yes.
We, of course, got sidetracked with Guardian Takedown and Bounty of Blood, but we're talking about flak here.
Yes.
Is it possible with a few tweaks that you can turn this build into that one, and how?
So that weird point that I have in Two Fang, this is where it shines. So when I want to farm a boss, you can just do a Gorillas and the Mist Monarch, but to me that's boring. I want to one-shot it. I just want to one-shot everything. So my setup to get the maximum damage is going to be my Amp Shield, followed by a Stack Bot. I'll swap to a Stack Bot. This is consecutive crits, increase our gun damage. Then I have... Grenade doesn't matter, just have the ASE on both the shield and grenade. An artifact, I use an artifact, doesn't matter what it is. I just look at the passives, I look for AoE damage, area of effect damage, and then I look for bonus and element damage. So whether it be 20% bonus shock, it can sometimes double roll to plus 40%. I've got a 40% incendiary one, but area of effect damage followed by incendiary damage. Just keep an eye out. Doesn't matter what the rest of the artifact is. And awesome. That's my gear load out there. As for the guns, now I only need to use Two Fang for a few select bosses, but if your build isn't quite perfect or you don't have a one-shotter, this is still useful to do. That 1 point in Two Fang, we can guarantee it on our shot. So when we launch into the game from the main menu, when you're safe quitting farming, I have an automatic weapon with a sizable mag. I make sure I spawn in with that in my hand. I shoot 19 bullets. I then swap to a high pellet count shotgun. I use a stagecoach and I shoot the boss twice. This is going to stack our stack bot. 2 shots from a good stagecoach is at least 50 hits, which is 250% gun damage from stack bot. That's like adding in a whole Amara onto your damage. And that's only half of what the class mod can do. And then I swap to the ion cannon, and that guarantees that we'll get our 2-fang shot. So my ion cannon roll ×2, elemental with either a splash or a 300% damage anoint. Shoot the boss in the crit spot, and boss dies.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun. I do it all the time for farming. You can even bypass Kilovolt's immunity phase, which is really useful for farming monarchs.
It's hard to do that. Like, you have to do it at the exact right moment.
I go in, I do the shotgun thing, I go behind Kilovolt, and you got to aim for the crit spot. So, bit of information with Fade Eye. It guarantees a crit, but it doesn't guarantee a real crit. You can increase your damage further by still manually aiming for a crit spot. So that's an extra tip to get some more damage out of Flak. So you do need to hit Kilovolt in that weak spot.
Interesting. Is that in the...
No, it's if you go behind Kilovolt, he's got a little box on his back. It's like a power core.
Okay. Look, because
it's not what Moxie tells you to do.
We all know Moxie tells us to shoot him in a special place.
Yes, we will not be shooting him there. We'll save him that.
Okay. I just want to know where his crit spot is. Okay, so
important information.
Look, Flak is just too flexible. I mean, no wonder he's my favorite.
Flexible.
So with the ion cannon build out of the way, what build are you perhaps thinking of bringing to us next time?
So the build setup that I've been having the most fun recently, thank you, Gearbox, for buffing all of the action skills, because Amara's Tandava. I never see this particular phase cast get mentioned. It's always Reverberation or the basic one. But no, Tandava is slightly longer cooldown, slightly less damage, but it's explosive and it does splash damage. So we can make it do even more damage. Cool. And you just chunk enemies. I've just been playing it in the DLC and it's so much fun. And it's a break from Ties That Bind. So I want to make a build around that. I want to get the most out of Tandava I can, and maybe even Phase Slam, because Phase Slam's so much fun as well. I want to use these action skills in endgame now.
I'm interested. This is exciting. I'd love to see that. Well, dude, thank you so much to the audience for joining us for the show. And thank you, Lazy, so much for being here. This was awesome. I had a wonderful time talking to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me again, talking about main robot Flak. Absolute legend.
That was awesome. And Lazy, where can we find you?
You can find me streaming to my Twitch, twitch.tv/LazyData. I'm live 5 days a week, always doing whatever I can to this game, one-shotting whatever bosses I can. Come on, Gearbox, throw me a boss I can't one-shot.
And can you plug that Discord for me one more time as well?
So it's discord.gg/Borderlands. It's you can find it on the official Twitch, I know, and that'll take you to it. Awesome. And of course, you can also find me on YouTube/LazyData and Twitter, lazy_data.
Awesome. Fantastic. I'm going to have to check out some of your YouTube videos. I know you got some new ones that just came out. It's going to be great. Yep. I imagine I'm going to be saying this more and more often, but because it's policy for us here at Ultimate Vault Hunters, Lazy, for achieving what a precious few will ever have done, a build that successfully completed pre-nerf Mayhem 10 True Guardian Takedown, I hereby once again declare you an Ultimate Vault Hunter.
Hey, thank you so very much.
And Guardian Takedown, post nerf, of course, and Bounty of Blood are both out now. So give the Flak Cannon a try and let us know the results via your favorite social media platform. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you in 2 weeks on Thursday, July 23rd on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and SoundCloud at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. If you'd like more details about the Flak Cannon, you can find a link to more information in the build in the podcast description section. Happy looting to all of you Ultimate Vault Hunters out there. We'll see you next time.